You are listening to Abnormal Spaces.
I'm Donnie.
I'm Ryan.
In this podcast, we discuss conceptual realities, the researchers, authors, and explorers who describe and define them, as well as our personal experiences in these abnormal spaces. In this episode, we discuss water. Simple H2O may not be so simple, and we explore not only its uniqueness, but its potential celestial origins and whether or not it is alive or is even consciousness itself. I've been thinking about water as consciousness and like how water could actually be consciousness, or it could be its own living conscious being. In like thinking about water and like doing a little research and stuff, I'm struck with some of the things that we've talked about previously, one of them being torsion and the whole spinning. So like the water cycle in the two hemispheres goes in a spiral fashion from the pole to the equator and back. And the North Pole, or the northern hemisphere, the direction it goes is a mirror image to the southern hemisphere. And so we have these two swirling spirals of water always circulating, but never really crossing the equator.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
It seems like that would make some power
Right.
somewhere, or some weird like Stargate shit.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, well, is the power concentrated at the pole or at the equator or where? And like, what would happen if the spiral momentum of one hemisphere was changed in some way, and how do they balance each other and all that, and how much does it shift when the orbit of the Earth shifts? It's really interesting, but that's something I didn't know.
So you're saying though that like, okay, like if I'm looking down, like if I'm above the Earth and I'm looking down on the sphere of the Earth.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say the North Pole is spinning right.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom is spinning left or
Yes,
right? Okay,
left.
so opposite.
Yes, opposite.
Ah.
Yeah. I guess mirror image probably isn't, because I was thinking at 2D, but yeah, it's like opposite of one another.
Oh, so then that kind of like in the middle there.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like it would make a 0 point almost.
Yes. Yeah, so then like that's the question, that I just thought, like where is the highest concentration of energy?
Yeah.
Because you would think it'd be at the border, but it could be at the poles, or it could be a self-regulating system, so there isn't a concentration of power anywhere, and that's why there's that boundary. Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Or it just cancels out right in the middle.
Yeah. Yeah. But that's often where hurricanes and typhoons are, around the equator, or where they emanate.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. What doesn't make any sense is there is a moon of Saturn. And so first of all, the Cassini mission was a 10-year mission where they sent a satellite to like just check out Saturn. And so, like 80-something moons. One of the moons, Enceladus, is a watery moon, but it emits 93 gallons of water per second into space. And what they've discovered is that has created a lot of the rings, because the rings are ice and dust. And so it's shooting this ice out, and then it is being held in place by the gravitation that surrounds Saturn. What's really interesting, though, is they were able to detect this particular, for lack of a better term, mineral. It's really more of a substance or whatever. But anyway, on Earth, the only place that exists is in the hydrovents on the ocean floor. There are a lot of theories about how Earth got its water, and a lot of astrobiologists and astrophysicists speculate that at one point maybe Earth didn't have any water at all, and one of the collisions from an asteroid was carrying water, and that put water onto the Earth. Another theory is that there is water between where the core is and where the first layer of mantle, I guess, is. And I probably have that cross-section a little wrong. But anyway, there's a layer of water in there that comes out and feeds the cycle. That's one thing we don't know. We don't know how water got here, or we don't know if we started with water or if it came here later or whatever. But the properties of water are anomalous to like anything else on Earth. And there are 60-something, I think 66 anomalous properties of water that don't all comport with our understanding of physics, our understanding of chemistry, etc. So there are things about water that are basically alien to us.
Yeah.
Yet we're 70% water. So it's not alien because it's the 2/3 of our body.
Yeah.
So it is us. So we are water. So I don't think we're aliens, but I do think that, or, not in that sense anyway.
I do.
I mean, we could be. You look at some of the Mayan artifacts and stuff, and some of those sculptures really do look like people in like astronaut suits, which is weird. But anyway.
Yeah.
So water has all of these properties that are different, that kind of break some of the laws of physics and break some of the laws of chemistry a little bit. And we don't know nearly enough about it. And you can study it forever and continue to come up with strange properties or, strange ideas about what it might be. One thing that there are two things that I find really fascinating. I didn't know this until you told me. So I didn't understand that the bond angle between the hydrogen and the oxygen made a difference as far as how we as humans process it. And so you told me about John Ellis and John Ellis's structured water and his machine to structure water. And then it turns out there are lots of other people who have done this. Victor Schonberg, I think, was one of them.
Oh, Schauberger.
Schauberger. Yeah,
Vortex, dude.
Yeah. And also Indian clerics, and they've been working with water too for millennia. And then I started thinking about the intentions as energy and imprinting onto water, or the water remembering the intention. And I thought about how a lot of times in the West, we really look to science to explain things, and that's great, and we should, but it sometimes comes at the cost of dismissing some of the more ancient wisdom or some of the more spiritual wisdom. And I find it fascinating that holy water is essentially the same concept in a lot of ways as some of these other concepts. And we'll get back to the bond angles in a second. So like, if you put good intentions and good energy into water, it behaves differently. And this has now been demonstrated countless times, whether it's in cooking food, whether it's in making art, etc. The positive attributes are imprinted in that water and then are reflected in whatever that water is used to create. So why wouldn't it, if you were a believer in Catholicism and the high priest blesses the water and, so says some good intentions to the water and gives it its magical qualities, then it has that. So if people in the West are willing to accept that, then they should be able to accept a lot of what we're getting ready to say about water.
Yeah, totally. I agree. I think not just humans being able to process that water differently, but machines as well. I think people are looking into like that bond angle. So I guess like the bond angle of water is what, 114?
Well, that's the good angle.
No. Well, oh, is it?
Yeah.
114?
Yeah.
What is it normally?
I can't remember.
God, it's like I had all this information about water, but I'm like, what? When was it? Okay.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. Anyways, what that means is it is easier to break. It's a weaker structure. So when your body or a hydrogen cell or something like that breaks apart hydrogen and oxygen, it takes a certain amount of it takes a lot of energy actually to break that angle and to be able to process those two things. And hydrogen is everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so is oxygen, but definitely hydrogen.
Yeah.
So this is kind of a tangent, but there was this random weird, I don't know if he was a scientist, but he was a creator of hydrogen cells. You could totally tell that just by watching the couple of videos that he has, but they're really short. And he basically has a hydrogen cell in a glass of water, regular water, or distilled, and he's got it all hooked up to this ammeter, for amps, and to show all of the draw and how much it takes. Well, he's sitting there, and he's like, okay, so we got the hydrogen cell in, and we're looking at this meter here, and it says 30 amps, and I think it's 30 amps, and this thing is bubbling a little bit or whatever. And he's like, okay, so it's taking us 30 amps to make this cell work. And then he flashes this little bottle of John Ellis water. It was a sample that he got from the company, from that John Ellis company.
Real quick, you can still get a free sample from the company.
You can.
Yeah.
I know. It's cool.
Yeah.
So he got this, and he's like, okay, now I'm going to add 15 drops to this water. He adds 15 drops to the water. Nothing happens for a minute. He's like, okay, well, I'm going to add 15 more drops. So he adds 15 more drops. And then the 30 starts dropping super slowly, but it goes to 29. And eventually and he's like, I can't believe that I'm seeing this. It goes to 1.
Oh, wow.
And then it goes to not registering on the ammeter.
Oh, wow.
And he was like, they make different coarsenesses of meters. And he's like, this one just doesn't go below 1 on its reading. He's like, so this is actually lower than 1 amp to make power. So it's actually putting out more power than it takes to make the power.
That's
the generator.
Awesome. Yeah.
Which is one of the whole things of all of this. It's
yeah.
They can't figure it out.
Right.
Well, you got to put in more than you get out.
Yeah.
That's usually the story.
Yes.
There's so little on John Ellis and all of the stuff that it makes it look like kind of hokey and stupid.
Right.
It's been measured many, many times in many super scientific studies, and there's white papers on it. There's patents on it. The bond angle is 104.
Yeah, 114.
Or 114, I'm sorry. So there's no question about that, and I don't know why it's not a bigger deal. It makes me feel weird, is this bullshit? But it's not bullshit.
It doesn't appear to be. But, I think part of the problem is not only do we have to fundamentally rethink water, but then we have to rethink how it gets to our bodies in the first place, all the plumbing and everything else, all the right angles, that apparently is bad, all the high pressure that we put to get the water all the way from the treatment facility to our house. It has to have a pretty high amount of pressure. It goes through all these right angles. It goes through pipes that have corrosion and whatnot. The other thing is water having memory. It's traveling through these dirty pipes, and it's picking up all of the other things that have been there before.
Yeah.
And so I think part of the reason that it can't be dealt with is because of the scale that it would take to change everything.
Well, if you go back to Victor Schauberger, basically putting a water in a heavy vortex is its natural state, and it constantly erases memory
Oh, okay.
and structures the water in a way where it's available as it's supposed to be to living organisms.
Well, and that makes sense knowing that the water cycle is a spiral.
Right.
So it's the same thing, basically, just on a smaller scale.
So if you imagine, like, I've seen this before, things go through straight pipes. Well, that's not natural. That doesn't happen.
Right.
It's always swirling multitudes of ways, like everywhere. You can't even, it's chaotic.
Yeah.
But I've seen people that make things that actually vortex your water as it comes out of the faucet to erase that memory and restructure it.
Oh, nice.
Glass blowers blow these pieces, and they're really, really beautiful pieces, and you connect them to your faucet or your shower, and they actually go through all these beads and then come out, and then, I don't know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
And you can see the vortex. It's real super strong. Apparently, the more pinpoint you get that vortex and the faster it goes, the more effective it is. But I don't really know that. I'm regurgitating some shit. So.
Right, yeah.
But it is interesting because that is cool that you said that, how water comes from a state that is pretty natural, and then, or I don't even know, actually, it comes from the water plant. So that's probably the first problem.
Yeah. Oh, definitely.
So we're not even, if we were swirling that water around, vortex in the water plant, we probably wouldn't even need to put so many chemicals and shit in it.
Right. And if we didn't force it to stand still so long.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, we've known for millennia that still water can make us sick, but water in a rushing stream or whatever usually is okay.
Yeah.
And that there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
Yet we have a big treatment facility. Every city has one, and it sits in these big vats of garbage, and then we just pump it full of chemicals.
Yeah, I don't know how hard any of this would be, but it seems like there would be a way to at least circulate that water through a funnel vortex and back in, just a recirculating thing.
Well, and you think about all of the rivers and tributaries and everything, there are no right angles in nature. That doesn't naturally happen. Our bodies, all of the plumbing from the arteries and veins to the capillaries, none of those have really right angles. They might be close, but they're never that, because again, that's not really natural. So if that's the way of the earth, and that's the way of the earth's inhabitants, then there's probably something to that, and there's probably a reason why there wouldn't be a bunch of right angles in nature, and why stagnant water wouldn't be healthy, etc. I come back to, if all of this is correct, which it appears to be, then what can we do? How can we restructure the water? How can we rethink water? And, what health benefits would that have? What cognitive, emotional benefits would that have?
I think it would just be more about hydration and get effective bioavailability of the water, because it's just drinking the Ellis water, and I know this from doing it, because I of course I bought a big old box of it is a box. There are people on eBay that actually brew this. Without going into all this shit, basically the John Ellis machine. Was he a engineer?
Physicist.
Physicist. Okay.
Yeah.
So John Ellis was a physicist, and he used to do design steam steam design or something on airplanes and different things like that. So he knew a lot about that, heating and cooling water. But he read the book by Michael Faraday, who wrote about if you heat and cool the water rapidly, like a lot, many times over, like heat and cool the same water back and forth, then you will alter the bond angle of the water. And so he got way on that, and he developed a machine that's basically a still, but instead of there's like a little ball on the side, and then there's the main vessel, and the cold water goes in the main vessel, and the little ball is a boiler that has also ultraviolet lights in it. So what happens is the water goes to the bottom, it moves into the boiler, and it boils, and the steam goes up, and it gets irradiated by the UV light, and then it drips back out and goes back, cools down, and keeps going. So it's like back and forth into that thing, hundreds of times per minute.
Wow.
So it's boiling and cooling,
Wow.
and then it comes out of as a distilled water. But it's not. But now the hydrogen bond angle is completely altered forever. Now this is where shit starts to get really weird. You all, everybody should check out John Ellis. There's not a lot of information, but there definitely is information. So this water with this altered bond angle, that's the distilled water. So like that would be, but then there's runoff. So the runoff is just like basically whatever the input water you put in. So like if you put in tap water, it's going to come out tap water. But the hydrogen bond angle is altered.
Okay.
As well.
Interesting.
Right? Yeah. So a lot of these people are using reverse osmosis water as feed water to this so that it doesn't scale up the machine and you're actually getting a really clean water.
Yeah.
No matter what. But early on, there were wells in like New Mexico and I believe Mexico. Somebody had gotten a hold of one of these Ellis machines, and they were told that if you take the runoff water and you add it to stagnant water or stinky water or polluted water or anything like that, that it will actually change the bond angle of that water because of the memory of the water. Mm-hmm. And because it's so easy to break apart the bond angle, that when you break apart that bond angle, the hydrogen and the oxygen actually eliminate the stuff that are the bacteria and fungus that are anaerobic. They have to live in a stagnant situation.
Right, yeah.
And of course, like that sounds crazy, but so I think he dumped like, I don't know, like 10 gallons in his well, and the animals got better. All of his livestock, they were sickly apparently because of the stagnant water in the well. Their coats got way better. Everything just it didn't stink anymore. It was pure water just from doing this. And so other people in the village found out about this shit, and he was giving water. He ordered more machines and was brewing all this, and they were coming and bringing buckets, getting this runoff water, putting it in their wells. And they saw the same thing happen.
Wow.
And then there was a giant sink hole in, like, I think it was in Texas or somewhere. It was this shit pool. And it was like 10,000 acres of it or something crazy. That may be an exaggerated number. It might have been 1,000 acres, but it's a lot.
Yeah, it's huge.
They used the Ellis water, the runoff water, and it cleaned that too.
Wow.
That's how shit's documented.
Well, yeah, I saw reports of a test where they were using it to plant corn, and the rows of corn that had the restructured water, they grew like on average a foot to a foot and a half taller.
Yeah.
There was a baker that had started using the structured water to make their baked goods, and At first, they thought there was a problem with the yeast because everything was rising so dramatically,
Yeah.
and they were like, "Oh, we've got to scale back on the yeast." And then they kind of figured out what it was. It was the water. So yeah, and the water having memory thing is really, really interesting to me. You had told me about Veda Austin, and some of those photographs of the frozen images, they're just mind blowing. I mean, they're absolutely mind blowing. But then, she took it a step further and started asking water questions before she froze it, and was looking at the answers in the frozen water, and that is absolutely incredible. And so I think about how, first of all, we're made up of water, 70%, and we carry traumatic baggage with us a lot. Like most humans in modern society, especially here in the West, we have all of this trauma that we carry around. And I just wonder how much of that is because the water is remembering it within us. So our cellular makeup has these memories. They're within us. They are us.
Yeah.
So, we've got to be really cognizant of that. We've got to be aware of that it's carrying all of this information and it's storing it within us.
Yeah, and I would go further to say that that's the subconscious is the cellular makeup and the DNA.
Yeah.
Because we don't have a way to get in there. We do have a way, but we don't know it. So it's interesting. So many things tie into this.
Yeah.
It's so wild that I was down here I had a earbud in my ear listening to this dude, Donahue. I can't remember. Anyways, he is just this dude that, like in the 90s, that was going off about the subconscious and why everything appears to be so crappy for us.
Yeah.
And he laid it out, man. I mean, he laid it out like, he goes, eventually, like everything boiled down to, he was like, well, how do you get the subconscious to clear out all the crap that it has in there? He goes, lie to it. He goes, you lie to it.
Yeah.
He goes, if you're sitting there and you're sick as shit and your nose is running and you got a headache and you're sick but if you just say, my body is perfectly healthy,
Yeah.
and you really like picture it.
Yeah.
Just picture you're getting up and doing whatever it is you're doing and you're just feeling good, and you do that repeatedly. He was like, your subconscious does not know the difference between a lie and the truth.
Right.
There's no such thing.
That's why it doesn't understand sarcasm or any of that.
That's why also when you listen to how you speak to yourself and to others and just in general, how negative it is.
Yeah.
It's all negative.
Yeah.
I don't want to do this. I don't feel very good today. I wish that didn't happen. You just keep going and going and going, and you can see that you are actually feeding everything you don't want into this massive supercomputer, which is the subconscious,
Yeah.
which in turn, by laws of physics, has to give you what it is receiving.
Yes.
It's like, oh yeah, you want more of that.
Right. Yeah.
And that ties in with water, like, perfectly to me.
Yes. That's why, like, after doing some of this research, I was like, is water the consciousness, like, or the subconscious, or what? Because it has energy, it has memory, it behaves. You can basically program water,
Yeah.
and so
Really easily.
and it can program you.
Yeah.
which is insane.
Yeah. Yeah. So sorry. I totally dipped out on this when I was talking about all the Ellis stuff because my brain goes faster than my mouth. But I ordered this box of Ellis water because I was like, yeah. And I did my research too. You know, there's a lot of bullshit on there.
Oh, I'm sure.
So there's like maybe 5 people on there that are actually like doing some really, really super cool stuff.
Yeah.
And I found this one dude, and I talked to him back and forth. Like, we got in a conversation about it, asked him all the right questions for him to take me seriously. And he didn't give a shit.
No.
But he was like, no, I give it to my mom. She has dementia, and she drinks. We both drink it, but she doesn't have a dementia anymore.
Wow.
And he's like, and this is the only thing that we've done.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was like, and he's like, yeah, I don't know, man. He was real low key about it.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, a couple gallons for what, $60, and and the rule quote with John Ellis water is 1 ounce to 1 gallon of any type of regular water over time, not too much time, will over 24 hours, let's say, will completely change that bond angle of the water you put it into. So it only takes 1 ounce of the Ellis to any other water, wait 24 hours. That water is now 114 degrees bond angle because of the memory.
Yeah.
Okay?
Real quick, though, how come it doesn't work the other way?
Because it's of a higher vibration, and the lower comes to meet the higher.
Oh, right. Yeah. That
Right.
makes sense. Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. Sort of part of me is.
Yeah.
I get this water, and I open it up. And the first thing I do, I had these little solo cups, and I put about, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 shots worth in there, and I'm like, I'm going to drink this.
Yeah.
Drink it down, and it tastes good. It's like sweet kind of. It's weird. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, okay, well, I did that. Now I'm just going to do whatever the next thing is that I was going to do. And within I'm not exaggerating, within a minute, I started feeling lightheaded. Like I was going to almost pass out. And I had to come and sit down, and it kind of was like getting worse. And I was like, and I started like seeing those little stars and stuff.
Oh, no.
And I was like, oh my God, like I poisoned myself. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
Is this water or what?
Yeah.
And after that went away, it did. I felt I felt fucking light as shit, dude. I felt so good. I couldn't believe it. And then I felt bad. I had to go to the bathroom. And I'm not going to go into it, but man, I could not believe it. I could not believe what happened. And so it is a real deal.
Yeah.
And if you're not ready for it, don't drink that much at the beginning. Because it really does. It goes right in, and I don't know. I guess it's just that hydrogen and oxygen break apart so rapidly that your body's not used to that surge of energy
Yeah.
and oxygen that happens. It's insane, dude.
Well, and I wonder too if your body is used to using X amount of energy to break that apart.
Yeah.
So it sends X amount of energy, yet all of a sudden it's broken apart, and now you've got this excess energy.
Yeah.
I wonder if that has something to do with it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah, it's your body freaking out, being like, "What?
Yeah.
There's all this free energy happening here."
Yeah.
Like it didn't even know how to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, and then, that also makes sense that it would cause like a purge because,
Yeah.
you would have that extra energy. You would have this new fresh water that was now like coursing through stuff, and it was flushing things out.
Hydrogen
Yeah.
was literally burning like just destroying stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is wild.
In your blood.
Yeah.
Because your blood's like what? What is your blood, like 90% water
Yes.
or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. So think about that.
Yeah.
And I started thinking about it. I was like, well, if you put an ounce of this stuff in a gallon of water, well, how much water are we as a body?
Right.
Like, I don't know.
I don't know either, but it's only a small number of gallons, I would think.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like, over time, this is the thing. It's a cascading effect, and that's what the guy with the hydrogen cells showed. The time that the energy input dropped to nothing, but it was over time.
Yeah.
So, and he only used drops
Yeah.
in a cup. So I'm thinking like, well, you drink this water, you think of it as a supplement almost, because if you just drink like a few ounces of this water a day, you would effectively be changing your body's your water angle
Yeah.
and restructuring the water of your whole blood.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder, okay, so, the moon influences the tides, and so much so that even earth, even dirt swells under the full moon because of how it expands water. So pagans and witches and people of that kind, I don't know. No, it's worth laughing at because I want to be
accept everything here.
Totally. Like I want to be respectful. But anyway, so people like this, they will often charge their water in the light of the full moon. So they'll have a vessel, they'll put it out to get charged under the full moon. And, people do this with crystals too. But at any rate, the water then is, used in various magic rituals and things. And I just wonder if, throughout time, if people that were really tuned into the earth and the cosmos and things like that, I wonder if they noticed this development in the water or this property that was, they thought, caused by the full moon, and possibly it is, but regardless, they noticed these qualities. They didn't know about bond angles. They didn't know about any of this stuff, but yet they knew that there was a change to the water.
Yeah.
Just like the priests and the holy people and the clerics, they knew that speaking good intentions and blessing the water or whatever caused it to do good things, or just like how when people, quote unquote, cook with love, how the food tastes better or whatever.
Yeah.
We have had this history with water, and we have had this understanding of some of the dynamic properties of water, yet because it seems so spiritual and woo-woo and whatever else, we haven't taken that part of the water equation seriously.
Right.
And we should have. And we if you're not, maybe you start today.
Well, we did, but we forgot.
Well, yeah.
It got erased. There's just a little fraction of time where everything got erased.
Yeah.
Imagine the whole history of everything, and then imagine a few hundred years, and everything got erased.
Yeah.
Because now there's a new story.
Right, yeah.
And now everybody's, not to go there, but it's true. Everybody got brainwashed into this new way.
Right, yeah.
Plastic's better than glass.
Right, yeah.
This is better than that.
Yeah.
Look at this. Oh, you don't have to do that anymore. Here's instant mashed potatoes. You know what I'm saying?
Right, yeah.
So it's a mass brainwashing. And then from that point on, it got passed down, except for probably a very small amount of indigenous, people and things around the world. But for the most, especially Western society, yeah, we're fucked. But that bled into, everywhere else too.
Yeah.
So now you're looking at all this crazy junk everywhere.
Yeah. Well, and so I think about the water having memory and the whole water cycle. And so, people are going around in the northern hemisphere having their bad days, being stressed out, and that water is just being spread around to everybody else via rain, etc. And so all of that negativity and apprehension and anxiety and stuff is just being kind of swirled about and shared about. Whereas in what's known as the global south, you don't see a lot of that. And a lot of people are like, well, that's because, those areas are less developed or, they have a different way of life. And I'm like, well, yes, that's definitely a part of it. But how much of it is that they aren't sharing as many of those anxieties and, negativity, or a lot less of it in like content or quality or whatever. So, there's less quantity of it and there's less deepness of it. And so that's what's being spread around down there in their water cycle. And knowing that there's that boundary line, and then thinking about all the differences between society in the Northern Hemisphere and society in the Southern Hemisphere just kind of blows my mind a little bit, because I'm wondering how much of that water is part of that.
Oh, it's probably most of it.
Yeah.
It's probably way more insane than we could ever really imagine, as most things are.
True.
I think everything is more insane than we could ever imagine, because I don't think we can imagine very well.
No.
Like, our imaginations are pretty weak.
Yeah. Yeah, well...
Even for the most amazing shit. 2, 3, 4, fuck is shit. And shit is fuck. And fuck is also fuck. Oh, shit is fuck. And fuck is shit. And oh, I don't know why. And then there's hell. The hell is shit. And hell is fuck. And fuck is fuck. Fuck is still fuck. And fuck is fuck. And fuck is shit, and shit is all of it. So when I say that shit, it's fucked up. Don't be so sad, just go with it, and go with it.
The other day, someone was telling me about how this particular physicist or author of some kind was laying out all the reasons why there couldn't be any extraterrestrial life. And I'm like, that's a failure of imagination, straight up. All that is like, you haven't really considered as much as you thought you have.
Right. I mean, totally. And it's like, I want to say it's sad, but it's not sad, because that's just the way it goes. I mean, like, that is what we have. It reminds me of when we were talking at some point, and we were talking about orgone, and I was like, well, what if that doesn't have anything to do with pipes? And what if it doesn't have anything to do... Like, what if you can just look at stuff and will it to be that way?
Yeah.
I mean, I think like that might be it.
Yes.
And so if you can look at water and be like, thank you for whatever you want to say to the water.
Yeah.
And I know it's corny, but you don't say it out loud. You say it in your mind.
Yeah.
Or you just take 10 seconds before you drink whatever the glass of water is, and you're like, my body's perfectly healthy. Thank you for, or just show gratitude, whatever it is.
Right.
First of all, it's good for you in general.
Absolutely.
Before you drink the water.
Absolutely.
And then you drink the water, and apparently you've changed the properties of the water.
Yeah.
And that goes along with all of the stuff you just said: holy water, sitting water out, vortexing water. The Iteracare even has a water protocol.
Oh, interesting.
It changes the structure of the water 1 minute. Remember, you drank it.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah.
And it's soft.
Yeah, it was soft.
Yeah,
it was very
weird.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's all of these things are just changing the properties of water. And I don't know if they're changing the bond angles or whatever, but the structure is different than the bond angle.
Yes. Yeah.
So the structure of water is just the way that the molecules are like arranged to be absorbed by whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I think it's really interesting. We talk about Tesla a lot, and it was, energy, frequency, vibration, and the water. So when they've done experiments where they've played 432 hertz, and then 528, I think, whatever the 5 one is.
Yeah, 528.
Yeah. So and then when they froze that water, the crystalline structures, first of all, they're all hexagonal. But secondly, they are really beautiful. I mean, and it goes back to some of the topics we've talked about as far as different patterns that you can see throughout antiquity and how they correspond to certain tones, etc. Well, this is the same thing, but just gorgeous, and it can be fractal patterns where it's the same thing repeating, or just individual structures. Yet when you play discordant tones or say negative words or whatever, then the structures, when they freeze, are very amorphous. They're not.
They're ugly.
They're chaotic.
Yeah.
And when you do interference, like cell phone interference and stuff like that, it's not even a pattern really. It's just it's all messed up. And so I think about that too.
Yeah.
And I think about how that's within us. It's 70% of us.
Yeah. No, totally, man. And it's the freezing thing of the water. I was going to say that the Ellis water, there, people freeze that water and they do these little things, and the water actually freezes and makes icicles that go up.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I don't know if you've seen it.
Yes.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell is that?
Right. And how does that happen?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.